Good evening. Welcome to DeFacto Review, a weekly roundup of news and current affairs here in Mongolia, with our commentator, Gerald DeFacto.
Good evening.
And I'm Anand Tumurtawa. We're live on MNB World on Facebook, and you can join in the conversation on Twitter with the hashtag Gerald_DeFacto. Today in our program, is a dispute over the ERDENET Mining Corporation about the 49% of its shares, or is it about something else? The Mongolian mining sector participated in the PDAC 2019. Did the delegates accomplish what they have set out to do at the conference? Lastly, and the government is revoking licenses for about 400 mines. Is this the biggest government overreach? All that and more in today's program. So in our first program, the events related to the 49% of the ERDENET mining corporations have been taking place for over the last 2 weeks. And the Trade Development Bank's executives were arrested and released, and an emergency regime was announced at the ERDENET Mining Corporation. And also, after the release of the executives, all of them gave an interview or gave some kind of a press briefing. So what do you make of this whole big issue about the ERDENET Mining Corporation and its 49% of shares?
Whatever is happening now with this TDB is kind of logical consequences of our transition since 1990s. If you see a bigger picture, companies usually grow, and they should grow, but those companies or banks growing using the politicians to make decisions for their own favor regarding public property, public land, those were growing faster in the current circumstances of Mongolia. So this phenomena where the businesses use politicians together, they make larger growth. I call it ERDENBILIGism and Mongolian, new phenomena of Mongolian democracy.
Yeah, you wrote about that in 2016,
yeah,
right?
That article highlighting about how some companies grow in that way, in a crony.
You talked about ERDENBILIGism. Can you talk about who is ERDENBILIG?
ERDENBILIG is a CEO. No, not CEO. He is a owner, the largest owner of almost all of the TDB, the largest bank in the country.
And he's also the board director.
Chairman of the board of directors, and also he owns Ulaanbaatar Bank, 2 banks he owns. And he was very close connected with the city leadership, government leadership for years. Unfortunately, this phenomena is very, very widespread in the country, to such a width that some businesses think that there is no other way, other than working or with having a crony relations with the decision makers. And those businesses turned out, but the justice system, judicial system, and because they bought it, and whenever the new election comes, new people come to power, they fighting with each other for recreating that structure back with their own people. In a country like in a country where the sort of business are very widespread, deep set in the society, usually these countries are most corrupt. And because it's corrupt, soon the devaluation of their currency is happening. Why? Because inflation is happening, unemployment is increasing, inflation increasing, and justice is disappearing. And then the more state goes into the economy, those people, because it's a corrupt system, they use the state fund property money for the interests of these business groups.
So you're basically saying is that most of our politicians work for ERDENBILIG and they try to serve him and his...
Not only ERDENBILIG, many companies. ERDENBILIG is not the first one, not the last one. But because it's the clear example of his evidence, I I mean, I'm working completely based on the media in the country about the way how TDB was buying major industrial assets of the country. So that's what I'm saying. So in such a country, they usually at the end they increase taxes. And when the money is not enough, they increase taxes, then they borrow foreign money. And when they cannot pay, they blame for that own fault another country or another some power, like what's happening in Venezuela and about America. So then down the road, the economy is not growing, then they put military power on, then they control the media. That's the typical scenario with corrupt country happening. So we go, Mongolia, to that direction extremely fast.
So a lot of high-profile people were arrested. The CEO of a trade development bank was arrested. The Mongolian Copper Corporation CEO was also arrested. And in this dispute, the press spoke about, a lot of people talk about that they were attacking the private sector. And maybe you also said that this is about cronyism. So who is right then? Who's basically right in this dispute? Is the government right for taking over the 49% and calling an emergency regime, or is it the right of the corporations who are saying the government is attacking the private sector?
Well, what happened was they have been arrested. Then released the next day. It turned out they had not the permission of the judge. And without that permission, you cannot arrest the people. So this is wrong that they have arrested the executives of any commercial bank without permission of the court. But another issue why they are not, that they don't have that document. It turned out there is a major fight between the power structure in the country. On one side, the judge and the prosecutor office. On the other side, the intelligence agency and the police. And it was very clear during the interview recently of Mr. Kansuk, who was advisor to Prime Minister Arton Huyak. He was arrested for a few years, kept in prison. Then he gave interview upon the release. He gave interview recently, and he said about very interesting, peculiar circumstances. He said in that interview last week that he talked to prosecutor Darlikjo, that time general prosecutor, but during the conversation he woke up, called him, and he in the restroom of his office, of his own room, he put water on. Then he talked to him. The only way you to be avoiding prison is get Arton Huyak talking to that time Prime Minister talking to the President. And then Kansuk asked him, why you are doing that in this room? He said, because I was listened by GIA, General Intelligence Agency. If the general prosecutor feels unsafe in his own office, how about the rest of the people? So that means it is very clear indication that this country is truly divided by the people who has influence, who has not. Concerning his interview, CEO, the chairman ERDENET of this commercial bank, Trade and Development Bank, which is 25% of Mongolian banking active, the assets. And he said that he's the first time on TV, on whatever, his appearance, his appearance like the appearance of the Jesus Christ. I remember the Ivanov, famous, well-known Russian painter, work, very long, big work in
it was the Daily News. It was the first.
Tretyakov Gallery. And I just was wondering, how come that the owner of the largest bank in the country shown his face only after 25 years, only after that arrest. At the time when the commercial banks owner should be very clearly known to the people who are there, what are they doing. Why? Because 9/10 of the banking asset belongs to people, saving, changing, who has a saving account, a checking account. So why he would be so secret up to now? So this is a failure of a Mongol bank, who makes sure that the owner of every commercial bank is clear and is clean. Is known to the people, because the people give their money there.
More transparency, yeah.
So this was one of the secret. The other thing, the issue is not the 49% of the ERDENET he had bought. The issue is whether he used public money or not. If he had used, then there was separate conversation, separate talk, with which money you have bought it. So Minister of Justice, Mr. Nyamdor, is saying that he bought it with the public money. And the same is said by Oyung Irden, who is the cabinet minister.
Yeah.
So if it is the truth, he has to explain. And the so-called price stabilization program of the previous government since 2012 had not only stabilized prices, but it had increased the prices of assets, for example, the apartments, etc. And Mongol Bank at that time had $4.3 billion reserve.
So the Prospects Development Association of Canada is leading voice of the mineral exploration and development of the community, with over 8,000 members around the world. The PDAC's mission is to promote globally responsible, vibrant, and sustainable minerals industry. As a trusted representative of the sector, PDAC encourages best practices in technical, operational, environmental safety, and social performances. And every year, you have taken part in this conference. This year, the delegates of Mongolian mining sector went along and took part in the PDAC. What did the Mongolian delegations set out to do at this delegation? What did they say at this PDAC, and what kind of prospects did they talk about Mongolian mining sector?
See, the mining sector is a substantial part of Mongolian economy.
Yeah.
85% of the export, 23% of the industrial output, and coal is a half of it. The remaining is almost the copper. And this coal, coking coal, the ATT, the state-owned this coking coal company, had produced the largest amount of coal last year, and supplied 20% of coking coal import of China. And they have re-established their reserve, and it turned out that they have 7.4 billion tons of reserve, and out of which 5.1 is coking coal. And that deposit is close to Chinese border, 270 kilometers. So the investors believe that it is good money, good value. So with that raised fund, ATT will create new infrastructure, including power stations, railways to two directions, to the southern border and to the eastern city. So that was the ETT company professionals were showing that what their estimations. And however, there are some things to do for the company to increase their social and ecological responsibility. Because I was writing an article for your information, which is coming in English next week, about the disaster situation from the Tawantalga mining site to the border. On that road, about its capacity is 3,500 trucks will be enough, but they were issued licenses for permissions for 15,000 cars. Because there is always car accidents, people die, and that's one of the beach social problem.
Did you tell about these concerns to the minister and maybe also to the people at PDAC?
Actually, the minister knows about that, but I don't know if they were expressing inside here and there. But I have not done it at the PDAC, but when I came back, wrote an article that this was the concern of the investors, because Canada is one of the prime investors in the mining world.
Yeah, it is.
The out of capital raised for mining for every year, more than half is raised in that country on that stock exchange. So it's a very important place for Mongolia to go ahead, and they paid attention to that.
And people from all over, as you said, people from all over the world come to this conference. What was the big picture from this year's PDAC 2019?
Well, because it's Prospectors and Developers Association of Canada, they pay more attention to the way how exploration goes around the world. And it turned out that 2018, non-ferrous metals exploration, meaning aluminum, copper, gold, and zinc, right?
Yeah, zinc.
For exploration of those metals, some $10 billion were spent. And out of this money, half went for gold, 22% went for copper. So this is a substantial, dramatic change. For example, gold price have increased.
Yes.
Okay, during these years. Copper also, and the copper price, which was initially at the end of 2017, it was about $61.73
and Mongolia
dollar per ton.
Mongolia has a lot of gold deposits and copper deposits,
and yet Mongolia is not spending money on exploration. And exploration licenses stopped in 2010 by President Elbegdor. Sees that here and there some permission comes out somehow, but however, Mongolia state is not spending money for that. And somehow the country should always, when you mine in business, you always explore your country. You know where and how, what kind of deposits, and you know exactly when you to produce it. And Mongolia, yet only 5.5% of the territory is explored.
Okay, moving on from them, maybe some people would dispute that those exploration will be bad for the environment. And on that note, on our last topic, the head of the president at Inkpolt spoke last week about the National Security Council's meeting, and it gave a statement that all state-funded exploration projects, mainly discovering deposits, will be taken back by the state. And within that, the mining sector accounts for 70% of our foreign investments. And Inkpolt stated that we will be taking all the exploration licenses and taking back all the deposits back to the state. And so basically the state owns all the licenses and all the deposits. And how will foreign investments negotiate fairly with the state?
What happened was the Chancellor of President Office,
Yes.
Inkpolt, who was the former speaker of the country, was referring to the advice of Mongolian Security Council, National Security Council, in which he said that they will get back or denationalize or nationalize or deprivatize, nationalize licenses of those companies who got any licenses for those deposits which was explored, discovered, estimated by state budget. And that's the nuance. But this statement made the interest to Mongolian in general mining business by foreign investors, of course, concerned. Why? Because it has been happening for years. They have been giving licenses to exploration licenses for those deposits which is already found and estimated. So now, but it's too late to change after almost 20 years. If those companies also spend some money, and either you buy it. I mean, it's not their fault if they have it. It is certain those who made decisions, state officials, which is at the level of parliament, at the level of ministry. And because of those permissions, these people spend a lot of money. It's too late and too little to get it back.
But the Chancellor Zingholt specifically said because of Article 6.2 that, no, 6.1, sorry, national resources belong to the property of the people, and that's why they're issuing this provision. And why make this provision now? Is it involved with the ERDENET mining corporation or also with other mines, basically?
Well, this consequences of his statement, if it goes as he's suggesting, it will take a lot of time. It will take a lot, I think, negative impact on Mongolian mining industry. Yes, the constitution provision saying that, but however, it was neglected for years.
Yes.
And then now, who is in the fault? Those who bought the licenses? It's from the second, third hands. It's like now people living in Zaisan, tell them that you are illegally, kick them out. Yet it is not their fault that they have bought property there. So the same with the licenses. So I think it was too late a statement, and it's, I think, it's impossible to implement. And plus, for example, when he was the speaker, there is a decision of the speaker, I have a copy of it, about Tsagan Sovruk copper deposit.
Yes.
And on July 1st, 2014, Parliament resolution says that there's no need to have a state ownership in this property. It's signed by him. I mean, why they were not doing their own time when they had the power? So this is today only lip services to make up worse the the investment conditions when this country needs the most investment, because 75% of the foreign direct investment to the country is in the mining sector. And you cannot stop it. It's the only sector where we can attract foreign direct investment.
So then why make this statement if it also detracts foreign investment and basically the law, basically this provision does nothing?
I find it's more populistic statement.
So just to ramp out?
Yeah, I mean, it shows that now the next year election, right? And within this year you cannot change anything,
so
even if you want to implement
to
it.
the people, basically.
Yes, that's what my concern. It's always happening before election. They to be very nice in front of the public, making any statements, and forgetting that what they have been doing before themselves.
So the last quick question: say that the government takes over every of this deposit. Can they manage these deposits? Can they basically manage all these deposits and mine them as they can? Maybe, I don't know.
State, if it is not corrupt, they can do it, like Norway does. But in a country like Mongolia, corrupt like this, it's very hard. It will take longer time to have a permission, and plus, in more bureaucracy, plus the state is always changed, where this state of the government 17 times changed for the last 30 years. And then every time they change the people. So it takes longer time. I don't think it will be more efficient. And but there are some points, true, in this statement, that if the budget spend money and found the deposit, why it should go like ownership of somebody else? So from now, I suggest them to follow that line, if they can. So then we will have a little bit better environment for foreign direct investment.
Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have. Thanks for staying tuned staying into Gerald DeFacto. We'll see you next week with more news and current affairs. I'm Anu Tumurtawa.
Thank you. Have a good night.